So I've got a shorter window than I generally like to allow myself. And so for that reason, I'm going to do the classic emergency touch and go, sort of airplane landing and taking off idea. And what I want to do is I really felt like embracing the theme of today. There's a lot of people, in particular the judges, who have probably heard me do the same similar talk for a couple of years, and they're probably sick of it. And so I figured that I was going to share an idea and a story. And the idea isn't mine, but it drives my research. And I want to bring it forward to challenge you, what you do, how you do your things, how you think about your things, and how we think about health as a society. It's what drives my research, and I'm really passionate about it. The story, on the other hand, in all of its glory and its embarrassment, is mine. And what I want to do with that is lighten the mood and remind ourselves that we shouldn't take ourselves too seriously. But also, in the Rehab Science Seminar, and I have some of my peers and mentors here, one of the really great things that happened in the last little bit was learning and embracing failures as much as the successes. And hearing that from faculty as well as the students has helped me learn to move on and take it with the job. And being that there are a lot of first-year students here and people who may not have been to conferences before, I want to talk about one conference in which I had a failure and a great success and all of the things in between. So the idea I want to share is about plants and trees. And I like plants and trees, and I can guess that there are a lot of people out here that also like plants and trees. And the idea is elegantly captured in the term biophilia. Okay, you're not going to go to jail if you're biophilic. But it was captured by E.O. Wilson, who described that humans likely have an innate and fundamental affinity for life and living things. Basically, a genetic characteristic that's evolved with us as we've evolved. Now, if you think about the fact that there could be a fundamental affinity in you for life and living things, think about that in the ways in which you may or may not bring nature outside of the general environment into your personal life. Think about whether or not you have pets. Think about how you decorate your personal spaces. What's your screensaver? What's your desktop background? What do you hang on your walls? Where do you choose to live? Where do you not choose to live? Okay? My guess is that for some reason other than strictly aesthetic, we bring nature into our lives, into our experiences, that doesn't include just the trees and the parks and the gardens that we have at home. And what if I told you then that there's a body of evidence, a growing body of evidence, and where I like to work, that might suggest that those connections might actually promote health and well-being in many different ways. This is a busy slide, but if you kind of let it seep in sort of through osmosis, okay, you'll find that in a lot of different contexts, there are a lot of interesting results, such as improved directed inattention, parasympathetic activity, or the rest and digest responses following interactions with nature. Okay, rehab and recovery, people tend to do better depending on what they see from their hospital bed. Perceived health in the population, where nature is in relative to where you live. Buffering effects of negative health or negative life experiences, decreases in stress, even decreases in pain, based on maybe what you can see from a procedure room in the hospital, and even decreases of health service use in prisons. If prisoners looked out from their cell onto nature versus looking out into the yard or the prison, they tend to use the infirmary less often. Interesting connections that for some other reason than purely aesthetic might impact our health and well-being. So what? Well, beyond just the personal experiences we have with nature, nature and the natural environment permeate all the different facets of our life and our culture. Nature, if we can show that there might be health-promoting benefits, that has an implication to public health, and therefore implications to policy and even political issues, particularly if someone could monetize that idea. I hope they don't, but it could happen. Obviously then conservation of the natural spaces that we have, and particularly in Canada, that's an important thing, and then the reclamation of the spaces that we've already destroyed. beyond strictly pollution, air quality, water quality, and soil quality, we need to think about what healthy nature might mean to us as humans. Obviously, then we're going to be worried about where we put our homes, our streets, our schools, our hospitals, and it's going to have implications to urban planning. And then, if we can form the argument that humans have an innate affinity for living things, and if the environment can be a determinant of health, then we have an argument for social justice and equity and access. Ready to touch and go? So the transition is, how do we get an out there idea out there? Okay, and that's up in Tobermory. And what I want to do to get that idea out there, what we tend to do is not often, as we probably like, publish in journals, but we attend conferences. And this is where the story comes in. So for students who haven't been to a conference before, a lot of different things can happen. And I've been to a few conferences and I've loved them. And this story happens here in Rome in 2008, in between me handing in my thesis and defending it 12 days later for my master's. Right. Let the picture sink in. I'm thankful that that picture hangs on the walls of some important people in my life that got me there. So I traveled to Rome on my own, no supervisor, no friends, no family, no colleagues, no one that I knew their first name. And I was on my own, and I was excited. I was in the middle of my thesis, and I was polished, and I was ready. And I stood up in front of a young researchers workshop that included experts and students, and gave what I believed to be a fantastic presentation. I was ready, I had great slides, I did it well, I knew everything that I was supposed to talk about. And the very first thing that came out of the mouths of experts in a student space were to find the holes and the problems and all of the negative things in my master's thesis, and didn't see the connections to health. No one had a health background. So beyond getting negative feedback, I didn't get any questions. And in the 34-degree heat in a shirt and tie in a university in Rome with no air conditioning, I sweat through my clothes, I had beads of sweat in my hair, and I felt very, very small, and sat down in the pew-like seats that they had in their university and considered whether or not 5 weeks from then I would continue to do my PhD in a field and with peers that wouldn't accept what I wanted to do, and how I was ever going to break through. And I decided, well, at lunch, when I had a glass of wine, because they served wine with lunch in Rome, I decided that I was in Rome and I was never going to get that chance again. And so I embraced that. And that I was at an international conference, and if I didn't like the people there, I didn't have to go international again. So I decided that I'd be not a nuisance, but that I would go and I would participate as best as I could. I would go to the sessions, I would go to the network meetings, I would join up, I would offer to do things, and I asked a lot of questions from a health perspective, and I asked a lot of questions from a Canadian perspective, because it was a mostly European conference. To the point that I was almost a nuisance, and I was certainly known by name by one of the experts who I was introduced to very briefly. In the very last session, on the very last day, I was about the second or third last presenter to do my last talk, and I didn't care at that point what was going to happen, because I had already crashed and burned, and I noticed just before I started that Terry, this guru and the expert that everyone had wanted to talk to, had walked in after the presentations had already started, but to watch mine. And I gave what I thought was a great talk in front of an international crowd and community. And Terry put his hand up, and I asked him, and he said, I want to congratulate you for doing interesting work outside of the lab where we do our work, and the implications of which have real meaning. And everything melted away, and I felt great. I was relaxed, and it didn't matter anymore. And so I continued to answer questions that he was asking, and I got more relaxed, and even though, as everyone else had, I had sweat through my clothes, and it was very, very, very hot and no air conditioning, I was spent, but still comfortable. And as I continued to answer one of his questions, I wanted to use the term testable methods that I was hoping to explore in my PhD. And as you might imagine, Seinfeld fans especially, it doesn't have to do with a name, but I was so relaxed and so overwhelmed that I told an international community of experts and peers and scholars that I was very much looking forward to the testicle methods that I would have a chance to experience in my PhD when I got home. And the room was very silent, and smiles perked up, and I perked up, and I concluded humbly, and everyone else was very fine with it, that any further questions would have to be asked of me at the bar. And it was a wonderful experience because I had the support that I was looking for. And so the moral, if I can be so brave as to actually offer one, is to just fail but learn a lesson. And that's kind of the point that we have to offer, particularly young scholars and our peers, and to be able to say it's okay to fail and it's better to succeed, but you're definitely going to fail too. And really, that it's a question of balance and learning to not take ourselves too seriously and to enjoy what we do and to have fun when we do it. And that's it. And I'd really like to thank my supervisor for not being there, because that probably was better for me, as well as the Department of Otolaryngology, who supports all of my work. And as we go to what I hope to be, I think, is lunch, I hope that we can share all of the different experiences that we've had, but also that people can sort of mentor each other through what can be really great, but what sometimes is not so great in the jobs and the careers that we might be pursuing. So, thank you.